Welcome to the Timely Topics Show, where we're bringing you all the buzz and banter of today's business conversations. Straight from our studios in downtown Hartford, with your hosts, Rory McGloin and Jennifer Matthew. Welcome to the 5th episode of Timely Topics. I'm your host, Rory McGloin, and I'm genuinely excited to be joined by my co-host, Jen Matthew.
Hello.
Our theme for this episode is failure, and later we'll be diving into the topic of navigating failure as a leader. And as always, we'll round things off with our mystery topic in the Good Idea, Bad Idea segment with our producer, Alex. Let's get started.
All right, here we are, episode 5. So this is our final episode. We're done.
That's right.
Yeah?
No, of course not, right? We're just getting started. We are going to go ahead and take a little summer vacation, and we hope you are too. So this is going to be our last episode, and then we're going to take some time off in July and August, and we'll be right back with you again in September.
I cannot wait to jump in to summer vacation. I love the summer.
I'm like jumping out of my seat right now because I am so glad that summer's finally here. I'm a big summer guy. I love all things about summer. I love pools. I love the beaches. I love seeing people driving around with their tops down and their convertible and just like getting into it and just enjoying all the things that summer in New England brings.
I think music sounds better in the summer. I always have like country music going when I'm cooking, when I'm doing things. I'm just in such a good mood in the summer. And I know you're a big summer guy because you have a big birthday in the summer. And this year particularly, a big one coming up.
I have a big birthday coming up, turning 40 July 6th. So feel free for all of our fans out there if you want to send in a few gifts, no big deal. It's a really great week of the year, right? So you've got July 4th. I've got my birthday on July 6th. My wedding anniversary is on the 8th. So we just take the week off. We celebrate. We party. I'm actually really excited. In a few weeks, I've got some folks coming over to visit me from Ireland. So they'll be joining us. And it's something that I really look forward to. I think that, you know, you talk about the holiday season in December. I think people get really into that. For me, my holiday season is that first week of July because I think the atmosphere is just people are ready to take a break, to go out, to enjoy all their hard work. And there's just nothing better, right, than getting the barbecue going, right? People out by the pool, hanging around, and just kind of celebrating that halfway point in the year.
Yeah, and you're not a big summer vacation, like physically going somewhere guy, right? You always say your vacation is your home.
My vacation is my home, and we've been fortunate enough to kind of like make the investment, right, in our space. And I just encourage everybody to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Find that thing that makes your home feel like a resort, whatever it is, right? It could be the simplest item that you buy. Yep. It could be a big time investment in your yard, whatever it is. It's like, so we've got this opportunity. We walk out the backyard, and we just feel like we get to go to our tropical oasis. So I don't go anywhere in the summer because it's like when you live in New England, I want to go somewhere in January, February, March and get out of here. But summer is finally here, folks. Jen, what are you most excited for this summer, right? As we head off on a little bit of a break, we're going to take a hiatus from the show. We've been working really hard. We won't be hanging out on Fridays maybe as much. What are you going to do at that time?
Yeah, so one thing I just want to let all of our listeners know is we don't physically get the summer off from like our real jobs. So I know. But I like that the days are longer. So when you are able to wrap for the day from work, there's still several hours in the evening where the sun's out, so I could take my dogs for a walk and we can enjoy the nice weather. As you know, I have an RV, so we've been RVing for the last couple of years. So we have a couple of fun trips planned. So just being able to get out, go somewhere, hike, and enjoy.
I think there's something good. You know, they say that living in places that have seasons is good for you. I'm 39 and a half years in and really still trying to figure out what the advantage is. But I do think that, as you say, like the days are longer, the sun's out, and there is something where when you're working hard all week, right, and it gets to 4 o'clock, gets to 5 o'clock, you feel like you've done justice to the effort that you needed to do. And you look outside and it's still sunny. Like it does, like almost like draws you outside. Mm-hmm. So I think for us New Englanders, especially if you're listening here, right, those seasons, like we've earned it. So just get out there and really do your best to enjoy it. Speaking of our listeners, Alex, let's dive into correspondence. We had a bunch of correspondence from the last few episodes. We're really great to hear. What do we got?
Yeah, Rory, we actually had quite a few correspondence, so I'll get started with the first. Lori R. said, Rory, you will have to tell us when you do stand-up again. You will have an entire crowd there cheering you on. And are you sure you just can't share one of your jokes?
Appreciate that, Lori. I don't think that any of the jokes are going to allow us to continue to tick the box that there's no explicit content in the show, so we'll leave them for off the air.
Sure. Next up, we have Owen, who made a comment for Jefferson Fry Company. And I quote, the best fries in Connecticut. Well done. All great show.
Nice. Thanks, Owen. I would agree. Best fries that I've had in Connecticut.
I keep thinking about French fries since that episode.
And just how about a big shout out to Jefferson Fry came in and did such an awesome job for our Build Hartford course finale down at Parkville Market. So if you're in the Hartford area this summer and you're wandering around Parkville, go say what's up to Emmett and the guys and grab yourself some fries.
We actually had a question from Benjamin T. from New York, who said, how do you find or dig deep for consistency and internal motivation when faced with daily dynamic challenges?
That sounds like a question for you, Jen.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really insightful one. I think the thing there with consistency, some people strive for perfection. So the always showing up every day and doing the thing that you said you're going to do, regardless if your body, your mind, your day feels like that's appropriate. For example, working out. Sometimes you have to kind of let your body tell you and drive. If there's a day you need to take off, it means your body wants it. It means your body needs to relax. So consistency doesn't mean perfection. It just means consistently showing up for yourself and listening.
And then for me, I'd just keep it simple, Ben. Like, you need a couple people in your life where you can pick up the phone and just say, hey, like, this is what's going on, and just having that release of your feelings, your thoughts, or emotions. Because if you've got good people in your life, like, they can quickly ground you back to, like, you know, what your good attributes are, what your good characteristics are. And as long as you're acting with good intentions, you know, find some solace in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. Next up, we have Sean, who said, the Athletic Brewing interview was awesome. It is so cool to hear success stories of real founders that built their companies here in Connecticut.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. That was such a cool interview. The guys were awesome. Loved the conversation.
I didn't know, like, half the things that I learned in the interview, so it was really good. Thanks, Sean.
Yeah, and lastly, we have something from Sarah, who said, I loved your last episode on success. The way you talked about success, how you measured it, and how personal it is for each of us. I agree that we are surrounded by the messages of what success looks like, but I want to focus on what I think success is.
Thank you, Sarah. We got a few other comments that came in as well. I got a great comment. Patsy Nolan went back and actually was listening to episode 2 and was actually talking about the Daniel Pink book that I brought up, A Whole New Mind. She says, I'm a lefty too, so I hope that you're correct, referring to Daniel's Future of Workspace. So thanks for checking in, Patsy. Had a comment from Lewis, thoroughly enjoyed the show, looking forward to future episodes. And I want to give my own correspondence on the show today. Congratulations to our very own Jen, who was awarded as the Hartford Business Journal's Top 25 Women in Business for 2024. Congratulations, Jen. We're all super proud of you. And of course, right, you continue to inspire many women in the world of entrepreneurship.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And thank you, everyone, for your correspondence this episode. Just because we're taking the summer off doesn't mean we don't want to still hear from you. So please send us your thoughts, your feedback, your comments as you're listening in. If you hear something really cool that made you think of us, send it our way. We would really love to hear from you.
Guess what just happened?
No way, you're kidding me.
Hey, did you hear about...
Are you sure about that? I can't believe they... Really?
It's time for Timely Topics.
In this episode's Timely Topics, we're talking about failure and its influence on us as individuals and in business. As we all know, things don't always turn out the way we want them to, and dealing with failure is a part of life. But how we move forward is often the primary way in which we build new skills and create confidence in ourselves. It's not always easy, but if you're going to grow, failure along the way is inevitable and maybe even desirable. Let's get started. All right, Jen, we're going to talk about failure today. And as we always do, getting ready for the podcast, getting our notes organized and our research. Last episode was success. I admitted this on the show. I struggled. Getting ready for the failure episode, no problem. Had plenty to say.
Yeah, actually, so when we said we were going to do failure as a topic, the thing that I was actually most excited about was not talking about failure in a negative way and being like coming from that point of like the fear, because we covered that already. We did that in episode 2. I wanted to come from a point of what do you learn? How do you grow? How do you expand? So failure almost to me is like, we're talking about opportunity today.
We're talking about opportunity, and you and I were kicking around some stories of times where we thought we failed, and Jen being inspirational was like, but those are doors opening, Rory. But I got to tell you, right, for anybody that's listening, like when you fail in the moment, it's really hard to pay attention that doors are opening around you. And I'm going to tell a quick story. It was at that pivotal point in my life, and I was finishing up my PhD, and I thought that I was ready to hit the market and ready to rock and roll, and a job description came out from my alma mater. And I swore that they wrote it for me. So I applied, I sent it in, and all I got back was an email that said, thanks for your application. We're moving in another direction. I was devastated. Now, of course, many, many years later, thank you so much for that decision, right? I couldn't be happier with where I am. But the point that I was going to make to kind of kick us off for everybody that's listening, and Jen, even for you, right? Those times when you fail in the moment, it's so hard to have the resiliency or the discipline to go, yeah, this happened for a reason. So I have a question for you. Have you adopted that mindset? Is that something that came naturally to you? Like, are you somebody that says, I think everything happens for a reason? Do you find that meaning in life?
Oh, 100%. I think so. I know what you're saying. In the moment, it's really challenging to be like, oh, well, this is great anyways. Like, I'm going to make something amazing of this, right? Because maybe you can with other people around you and you can help them put it into perspective. But of course, when it's personal, it hits you hard. But I think it's always coming back and remembering that sometimes what you get what you ask for, it just comes in a different form. So you may ask for a very specific thing, but the underlying why you asked for that, I think it ultimately comes. It just shows up differently.
I think it takes some level of maturity to start adopting the principle of everything happens for a reason. I think over time, it's a byproduct of failing and then overcoming and failing and overcoming. And you accumulate enough of those moments to say, all right, I failed or things didn't go the way that I wanted to. And then you're totally capable of saying, you know what, though? That's okay, because the last time that this happened to me, it was okay. I've often talked to people that I've either been mentoring or working with and say, like, when was the last time that you really set out to do something and didn't go through the process of doing it, as a reminder to them that more often than not, like, we may not always get what we want, but we still are relatively resilient enough to keep going.
Yeah. So what's your relationship with failure?
It hits me hard. I was doing a session last night. I was interviewing for my daughter's coaching position for her youth soccer team. And they asked me a really profound question. And they said, how do you take criticism? And I laughed. I was like everybody. But to me, I think one of the things that's hard is, like, failure is not necessarily just about me. I think it's so social, and you just feel like you're letting people, around you down. You're not meeting their expectations. You want to hold yourself to this high standard, and it stinks to walk into the room or to pick up the phone and say, didn't get the job, didn't get the grant, didn't get the offer, didn't go my way. And it hits me really hard. How do you deal with it?
Well, yeah. So actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking, you know how many times people don't tell anyone what they're doing, what they're dreaming, what they're planning, because of fear if it doesn't work out. They don't want to then have to make that phone call again and they go, well, I didn't actually get that thing, right? But I think if we put ourselves out there, we share this goal we have, and this happens in entrepreneurship all the time. We always say, like, don't keep your dreams a secret, because you never know who you're talking to that can connect you to the right person and make that dream a reality. So I'm a big proponent of putting it out there when it makes the most sense. There's certain things you keep behind the scenes and you kind of wait until you can push it to that next level before you put it out into the world. But no.
I think that for our listeners right now that are maybe like they've had a failure today or this week or this month or this year, just as a reminder for everybody, right? Earlier in the episode, we talked about having somebody on the phone that you can pick up and just say, like, this is what's going on. Well, I just want to be the person on the other end of that line right now that's like, ultimately, like, everything we've become is a byproduct of the failures that we've experienced. And if for some reason you don't absolutely love where you are, then maybe it's time to go fail a little bit more, right? Maybe it's time, as you're saying, Jen, like, put it out there and, like, let it fly, because some of those failures and those experiences are ultimately going to lead you to the byproducts to get you closer to whatever it is that you feel contented with. And if you do feel contented, right, it's probably a byproduct of all the failures that you've accumulated over time. We talk about situations in the entrepreneurial space where this idea of, like, failing fast, fail early, it's not always easy, though, right? Like, it stinks. Like, when things don't go your way and you set an expectation, how do you find the resiliency? Or when you're coaching an entrepreneur, what is the advice that you give them when their head's down and they're going, this doesn't work, and, like, maybe I need to pull out. Maybe this isn't the thing for me. What advice or what things come to mind for you to help to keep them going?
There's a fine line between quitting because it's tough and letting something go because it's not right. And I think it takes more strategy, intelligence. It's more difficult to let something go when something's not going right than to make something successful, in my opinion. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is really, like, sitting into that moment, being present and understanding, are you quitting because this is tough? You're running uphill and you just want to sit down? Or is this really not the right thing for you?
Yeah. And it's hard to sometimes differentiate between, like, did you fail because of the process, the strategy, or the tactic? Or are you failing because it doesn't bring you joy? I think that's what we're saying, right? If it does not bring you joy, and that's the reason for the proverbial failure, then it's okay to terminate that thing and go find joy. But if you're failing because of tactics and strategies, you got to go back to the drawing board and see what else you can try and experiment with. That is part of being an entrepreneur. I'll say this though, Jen, like as we make a transition almost from the individual to the business side of this, it feels sometimes more difficult to fail in a collective fashion on a team. We've had some sports analogies here over the past, right? It feels a little bit more difficult, right, when you fail as a team because you were at one point anticipating all the success, all the glory, all the celebrations that might have come. And the same is true for a business. And we've had some great entrepreneurs on the show already. And you can imagine those moments when they open that new restaurant, right? Or they have that new art installation and they're just celebrating it as a group. But when it doesn't happen and you're looking around the room, it's the worst feeling.
Yeah. Well, we always talk about disappointment, and that's one of your things. You don't like disappointing people, and you don't like when you're disappointed. And when you're working as a group on a team, I think the failure, it hits differently because it's not your own personal baggage now that you're carrying. You almost carry the weight of that disappointment for a lot of other people.
Yeah. I you know what I worry about too is like failure can be contagious, just like winning can, right?
Yeah.
And you look at businesses or organizations or franchises where they almost seem to be like perennial winners, like everything they touch just seems to work. And then you have, unfortunately, like sports franchises, just as a quick and accessible example, where they just can't get out of their own way no matter what. And then, you know, you come onto that team and you think, I'm going to be the difference maker. And when it doesn't work, you really do start to wonder. So I wanted, for the sake of our conversation today, to try to like move in. You said, let's talk about failure as being this opportunity-based thing. So what techniques can we utilize to help maintain that mindset, right? Because failure is happening all the time. We have expectations every single day, and they're not always going to be met. So what is it that we can do to have a disciplined mindset to help get us thinking about those doors and windows that are opening around us while others are closing?
Yeah. And well, I think even just on when we talk about managing our own team and our people, when you're surrounded by other people that maybe they haven't made it there yet mentally, where they're accepting of failure as a learning. I think as a leader, it's our job to teach that in our team members. And, you know, we talk about this in the center all the times. I think we create a safety net, both for entrepreneurs, but also for our team members to do things that might be a little scary, put themselves out and see what happens, but know that if they fail, there's a bunch of people around them that will support them. I think that's a safe way for them to try it so that they know if they stumble, we're here.
Experimentation, right, is so important there. Jen, you know my love for improvisational comedy, but also training, and some will tell you even like way of life, lifestyle. For me, it's yes and. It's having this mindset that we're going to take what happened. We can't go back and delete it. We can't edit it. We can't replace it. What's been put out there has happened. And what will you do next, right? And so there's so many great resources out there for folks that might be interested on the yes and concept or approaching the lifestyle of yes and. And if you really embrace it, it's this idea that you're just going to take what's happened and then go forward and build with it. And when you surround yourself not only with people that are yes and oriented, but are genuinely believing in the idea that they can add to it, it is changing. So I think the other piece of it is if you're a leader, being yes and for your team can make a huge difference as opposed to being that person that's no but, because no but is just saying what you did was wrong and then you don't have the regret and the disappointment around it.
Yeah, I even think when we lead our brainstorming sessions, you're really good at reminding the group. You always follow up with the yes and I can see that other people do the same thing back. I appreciate that. And in brainstorming, it's so challenging because people want to come and be like, this is why this won't work. This is why it's not going to happen that way. And the reality is if you just let people flow, let people come up with ideas. It doesn't have to be the most accurate thing, but you might get something out of that.
Yeah, you love to do that. I mean, I've seen you kind of embrace that as a spirit. But I'll also acknowledge this, right? It can be scary for people when they maybe haven't grown up in a culture where failure is okay, or maybe they don't feel like the space is safe enough. Things that we might need to do as business leaders in the organization to create a safe space for failure. I think one of them I'll list off is like this idea that how you provide criticism or critique and feedback. That's so important because obviously ideas do need to be discerned, in my opinion, right, to help get them to be better. but you really want that feedback to land on the idea, not the person. And, separating the art and the artist isn't always easy.
Yeah. So I know we talk about sports a ton, and you are a coach and an athlete, and you coach your daughter, not only in sports, but in life. How do you deal with navigating failure or teaching to the acceptance of it?
I think what works in our home is we set some standards that we're going to try to follow every day. And I think that if we fall short of some goal, having been consistent with the standards that we set, we're totally okay with it, right? So if we put the work in during the week and we show up to the game on Saturday and it doesn't go the way we wanted it to, we can be totally okay with that. But what you can't be okay with is showing up on Saturday and thinking you're going to have a great performance, but you haven't done any of the work. And I think that's where it can be difficult, right? Because our healthy and sometimes unhealthy obsession with like work or movement, right? There's this great meme that's floating around with Denzel Washington. He says, don't confuse movement with progress, right? And I've been showing that to some people lately because I think we like to kind of keep moving and think we're going forward. And I think, so ultimately I would say, and you said this earlier in the show, Jen, it's just like, be really deliberate and intentional about sharing what your goals and outcomes are.
I love that you said that quote. I often think about that when we're coaching entrepreneurs about this sense of progress. They like to do, I see them doing a lot of things to keep them busy, and because they need to fill their time in thinking that those like small little incremental elements, while some may actually help them be successful, it's really just keeping them busy from doing that thing that they're actually afraid to do, which is the giant leap that will get them to the next level.
Yeah, eat the frog first thing in the morning,
Yes.
right?
Love that
Fail quote. Maybe first thing in the morning, but also recognize that there are things that you can do to help build momentum too. So as we look to round things up, Jen, is there something where you've ever encountered a situation where you thought it was a failure and it turned out to be this great thing? Or like, what advice maybe would you have for somebody who's kind of feeling like they're struggling right now and they're looking to have that quick turnaround?
Yeah, I think they happen all the time, but I've been much better about being accepting of that. So it depends on how badly you want it. I think connecting back in, we've said before, what's your personal measures of success? What are the goals you have? If the failure was in achieving a goal that you know that you ultimately want to work towards, go back to the drawing board, figure out what went wrong and try to make corrections, learning in the process. But also just remembering that if you keep making progress, you're going to end up in the right direction.
I love it. For our listeners and viewers out there, we know you're working hard. Thanks for tuning in to listen to this episode, especially on a topic of failure. We hope it resonated in some way. If you've got any tips or techniques, things that you've done to help you come across failure, we'd love to hear what they are. And tell us maybe a story. If you've ever had what you thought was the biggest failure in your life and it turned out to be the best thing ever, share those stories too, because they certainly serve as great inspiration for everyone around you.
In this episode, Rory will be interviewing Jessica Lynch. Jess is not only an accomplished angel investor, but also the founding general partner for Raise Capital, a data-driven pre-seed fund with a mission to invest in exceptional founders leveraging technology to make a meaningful impact on the world. With a rich background in consulting and entrepreneurship, Jess brings a unique blend of expertise and insight to the table. Let's have a listen.
We're here with Jess Lynch in studio today for our interview. Thanks so much for coming in.
Absolutely. Pumped.
And even better, thanks so much for coming to Hartford. I know you just recently moved from Boston and you're just immersing yourself right into the community. It's great to have you here.
It's been awesome.
So I'm getting ready for the interview. Jess Lynch has done some amazing things in her life, right? And I'm looking at this, graduated as valedictorian with an MBA and a Master's of Science in Accounting from Babson College. I can promise you I never had to say that word for myself one time, so I had to practice the diction on it a few times before we got started today. In addition to that, the founder of WishRoute, which was a text messaging marketing solutions company for subscription-based companies. You just recently exited that, which is fantastic. Along the way, you worked at PwC, and today you are the founding general partner for Raise Capital, a business that is using data-driven inferences to help make pre-seed funding investing decisions and exceptional founders using technology to change the world. Wow, right? That's impressive. So congratulations on all of that success.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So our episode is on failure, which is kind of funny because you've been nothing but a success. But we know that along the way, you can't really achieve anything without making some mistakes. So I want to start the conversation off by kind of talking about this amazing entrepreneurial journey that you've been on. But what are some things along the way when they happen to you that you're like, oh no, I'm totally doomed, right? It's never going to be good. And along the way, you found some success.
Totally. Well, my first foray into failure was actually fairly young. I think it was in high school. It was freshman year. I was at Babson, and I went door to door to all the businesses in town looking for a summer job. I had my resume, who knows what the heck was on it. There couldn't have been much, but door to door to the different restaurants, to the movie rental place at the time, no one would hire me. And it was demoralizing to just get no. And so I'd been babysitting, and I realized if I could group babysit, which essentially is a summer camp, I could make a good amount of money in 1 week, like I would, all summer working minimum wage. And I did that. And so it was the first time I realized, like, wow, I have the power to do things outside the box.
Isn't it kind of crazy? I feel like when entrepreneurs, and I've gone through this a little bit myself, right? I really only started to regard myself as an entrepreneur maybe in the last like half a decade. But then I'm looking back to my days in high school, and it was like, no, we were selling mixtapes and CDs. It was so entrepreneurial, but at the time you were just trying to find ways to make some money for the weekends. Do you have that thing where you look back and you're like, wow, I've been entrepreneurial this whole time, but I only realized it maybe recently?
Yeah. I mean, even like in second grade, I told my parents that I was going to start a hamster breeding company. And I had a whole business plan with crayons, of how I was going to breed hamsters and then sell them to my friends at school. I had big financial projection. It was going to be, a $1 billion company.
That's
Probably
good.
not. So my parents knew better than me. They got me one hamster. Turns out I was terrified of them, and you can't breed hamsters with one hamster. So they knew, and they saved me from a bigger one.
And you just saved all of our listeners. Like there was a few other people thinking about going down that path, and now they've been saved too.
Really
This is the kind of advice that you
it.
offer. Yeah.
You have to love what you do, and that became very important.
It wasn't it. You've had this process, right, where you've gone through this journey, and you've learned so much along the way, and you've been able to learn from your mistakes along the way. What's your mindset towards improvement, right? So in an episode on failure, like what is it that keeps you going and that keeps you hungry and keeps you driving forward?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I always remind myself that all we have to ask of ourselves is to take the next right action. Mm-hmm. And we have to learn and adapt and try again, because you never know what door is going to open next. And I try to put myself in other people's shoes, like my best friend's shoes, and what would they say to me? Like, it's not a big deal to try something and have it not work. Yeah. Like, all you have to do is have it work out more than it fails.
Yeah.
And if you don't take the shot, you'll never get it. Like my saying in life is, you don't get what you don't ask for.
That's it.
And so you just have to keep trying to take the right next step and then be kind to yourself. But like, no one expects perfection. Like, I would never expect that of you, that everything you do is going to work perfectly. Mm-hmm. Like, that's insane of an expectation, and yet we hold it of ourselves.
Yeah, amazing, brilliant. And I love tying back to episode 3. We had Andre Rochester here, and I said, like, what was the one thing that you would tell people to work on? He's like, don't strive for perfection. Just be the best you can. Let's talk about this. There was a great story that you shared with me as we were preparing for the interview about Wish Route and kind of this like personal journey and like what it meant to you. Can you just tell everybody a little bit about what Wish Route was able to do, what you accomplished during your time and prior to the exit?
Yeah, how it came about was I was at Babson getting my MBA. I had really stepped away from my corporate life doing financial forensics at PwC, and it was a chance to pause. It was a privilege to pause because, I was paying for tuition to kind of get inspired. A little crazy, but I was hoping that something would come out. I had this inner knowing that there was a company inside of me that was just waiting to be born. And I started just being problem obsessed, listening to everyone around me, waiting for that spark of inspiration. And I kept hearing, I wish I was exercising more. I wish I was meditating. And it struck me, like, we have hundreds of thousands of apps for that. What's missing? And realized that after doing customer discovery, when people are successful, they have accountability. And it wasn't coming from an app notification or an email. It was coming from a friend checking in, their gym buddy. And this is a very personal passion of mine because my brother was the first in our town to be diagnosed with juvenile diabetes as a kid. And my mom doesn't take the status quo for granted. She charges her own path, and when the doctor said he should eat ice cream after dinner and like it doesn't matter what he eats, his diet doesn't impact his health, she was like, this makes no sense. So she quit her job and researched treatment options and actually wrote a book about how we changed our lifestyle one little habit at a time and the extraordinary impact it had on my brother's health. So I got to see firsthand through that journey that when you have support in life, anything's possible. But people typically don't have the support they need to change their life and move forward. And so that was the inspiration along with my research of like, if we can give everyone an accountability buddy for anything they're trying to change in their life, like, wow, what could be possible?
It's amazing. I love every part of that story. The inspiration from learning from your mother, like being family oriented, driven by a core set of values, one little habit at a time, which is part of that overcoming the failure process. So great gold in that. And it kind of makes sense now why you're doing what you're doing today. And we're going to get to that in a second. But Wishroute did really well. And you got into a position where maybe you thought, I think I might be able to exit, right? I think there might be an opportunity here. But it didn't always necessarily go exactly the way you thought it was going to do. Tell us a little bit about that journey when you got to that stage.
Yeah, and we hit a lot of hard moments. I mean, I wouldn't say it went well at all. I mean, we pivoted a number of times. We started out direct to consumer, went to B2B2C. We were working with gyms and fitness studios. Then the pandemic hit.
Perfect.
Started running out of money. We were paying payroll from my own savings. I was literally Googling, like, when are you crazy as a founder? Like, when do you give up? But I had this inner knowing that there was something on the other side. And then we ended up doing a new customer discovery process and pivoting to white label for health and wellness apps. And it's kind of ended up being the fullest expression of my original vision. And that took off. But then we had a market shift again where capital markets tightened in 2022 over the summer. And so we pursued M&A not out of the best position of strength, but it was an extraordinary opportunity. We pitched 60 companies and we got to the finish line with my absolute dream acquirer. Unfortunately, it was another failure moment. It did not work out at the last second. And the day after that was one of my hardest moments of my life because I had given 6 months to this M&A process, and to have it potentially all just end there would have been so devastating. But I do believe in that next right action, and I had put a lot of time and good intention out and worked really hard through that process. And so I think because of that and a little bit of luck and timing, we had 3 companies come to the table all on the same day, if you can imagine, like 2 weeks after the larger deal fell through. And we were able to put together a similar deal very quickly after that.
You know, that's awesome. For our listeners, first of all, congratulations to you, Jess, and to all of your work being rewarded. But you said something in there that stood out to me, right? Luck and timing, right? I think that if you're going to be successful, it's going to come with a big dose of resiliency, and that you just keep putting your best foot forward. You keep making that best right decision coming next. Stay true to your values, and luck and timing along the way can definitely work out. Let's talk a little bit about what you're up to today. So you exited, and now you're serving as an angel investor. And for some of our audience members that may not be exactly familiar with what that means, or maybe more familiar with startup investing in general, can you give a brief summary of what it is that you're doing now?
Yeah, so when I was reflecting on my experience as a founder and all my learnings, I was thinking back, what really lit me up? Like, what did I love the most about the experience? Should I go start another company? You know, what's my next step? And as I reflected, I realized my most rewarding, fulfilling moments were actually helping other founders. And not that I had figured everything out, but I had figured some things out. And when I could help them move their life or business forward in that step, just like we were doing with Wishroute, we were helping people and businesses move their lives forward. So I realized, okay, if I can do that for other startups going forward, like that's the right next step for me. And so angel investing means putting your own capital into up and coming companies and founders that you really believe in. And at the earliest stages of startups, you're really betting on the founder. Yeah. All you know is that everything else about the product, customer, market is going to change. And so it's a really amazing opportunity for me to pay it forward and be part of other founders' journeys.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I was doing some research along the way, and as a social scientist, I was particularly intrigued with a bit of methods that you're using right now. So you've combined some social science with AI to create some founder aptitude predictor scores, and you're using that to try to help the process, to help maybe go on just beyond intuition or beyond the network that you're in. Can you give us just like a brief description of what that's all about and how it's been, what it's been like to use that, or how it's helping you?
Totally. So I teamed up with one of my angel investors in Wishroute, Greg Raise. And so him and I are starting Raise Capital, which is about reducing the bias in early stage investing and being more data driven. So right now, investors are mostly making these investment decisions off of gut and intuition, which means leaning into things you know, which often means funding things that look familiar, which also is part of the reason that we have less money going to minority female founders and also older founders, and that's actually the data shows that if you have 11 or more years of work experience, you're more likely to be successful. So we just see all these broken things in early stage investing and decided, let's look at the research, let's create our own formula for how to predict if someone has high correlation to what post-exit successful founders have looked like. And so what that means in practice is we have a predictive score next to every founder in our pipeline. And we're not trying to automate investment decisions by any means. We're still using all the typical diligence and our own founder experience and investing experience. But this helps us pay attention to the highest correlated founders as an extra check to make sure that we're not being biased ourselves.
I love it. We have adopted the entrepreneurial mindset profile here at CCI because it felt like to me, coming in as a social scientist, I really wanted to go one step beyond and see, like, can we help the entrepreneurs understand their strengths and weaknesses from a skill set standpoint? So we've got plenty to talk about after this interview is over. Speaking of which, we're about to jump into our rapid fire questions that we have for all of our guests here in season 1. And so rapid fire question number 1. If you could change one rule or one law, what would it be?
Well, I've been traveling a lot lately, and I find air travel to be extremely challenging. I find the seats get smaller and smaller every flight I take, which is just hard to even fathom.
I can relate.
And I think there's a humane level that needs to be set of how much leg room. And then when the person puts their seat back in front of you, you can't even open your tray table and work on a laptop. There's no room. So I feel like we have to draw a line somewhere.
Okay.
I really believe in free capital markets, but like there has to be a line. So that would be the one.
I can get behind you on this one because if I don't get the eggs in a row, it's just not a fun journey for me. Jess, what's something you're not good at?
I love variety and newness. And so I am not good at anything repetitive.
Oh.
So if I have to sit down and send follow-up emails, 30 times in a row, my brain just explodes. So I've had to learn how to time box. If I have to do something 30 times, first of all, can I delegate? Can I automate? And if not, how do I time box it into 4 chunks so that it sort of feels new in each of those chunks? But yeah, anything repetitive, I really struggle with.
All right, very good. Last question for you. How do you want to be remembered?
That everyone I met and came in contact with, I moved their life forward in some way or had a positive influence on that interaction. Because I think life's too short, and I've been given a lot of privilege, and I take that as a responsibility that I need to make the world and everyone around me better and show up and be as generous as I possibly can.
Well, you've certainly made our show a better place for coming on today, and our listeners are really going to enjoy that. It's an absolute pleasure. We're so excited to have you here in Connecticut with us. What
I'm
an
excited to be
asset,
here.
and it's really, really cool. Jessica L. Lynch, you can now find her on TikTok. She told us before the episode started, she just started her channel, so go on TikTok and you can find her there. She's given all sorts of great advice for startups and entrepreneurs. Jess, pleasure to have you here, and we know we're going to see you around CCI a lot more often.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Great conversation, Rory, and thank you so much, Jess, for coming into the Collaboratory and interviewing with us.
Good idea?
Bad idea.
As we know, in the world of business, there are good ideas and then there are bad ideas. In this segment, Rory and Jen will debate the value of a specific idea. And since the theme for this episode is failure, there's no better topic to discuss other than bankruptcy. So here's a question. Do you think it's a good idea as an entrepreneur or business leader to consider declaring bankruptcy, or should you consider other options? And if you do declare, will your reputation forever be tarnished? Thoughts?
That's a good topic, Alex. Wow. Do you have a gut reaction, Jen, to bankruptcy?
You're going to go first.
The ultimate failure in business?
You're going
Wow.
first on this
Okay.
one.
I'm going to go gut reaction on this one, folks. I think that failure is good. We talked about that a lot in the episode. You got to draw a line for me somewhere. I can't say that it is necessarily good in this case. I don't think it's a good idea. I know that it has its place, and I'm sure that from a legal standpoint, it's helped to protect people. But I just think when you are, liable, that you got to be accountable to it. And it really does for me. I think it does probably really impact your reputation for a long, long time. Maybe not necessarily as an individual, but certainly from a business standpoint, creating liabilities and not being able to follow through. I mean, that's got to be a really tough feeling, but I'm going to say bad idea.
Okay, so Alex, I'm terrible at playing this game, as you know. And I don't know that I'm going to land on it being a good idea or a bad idea at all. I think it's just a thing. I think I'm going to talk for like corporate side of things. Bankruptcy, it's a thing. It's available so that companies can restructure their debt and potentially move on and move forward. So if you remember back in the financial crisis in 2008, there were many very well-known businesses that filed for bankruptcy and went under. There was others that announced they were filing, and then the government came and bailed them out, whatever anyone thinks about that whole thing. But did you know that in 1996, Marvel filed for bankruptcy? And look where they are now. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a thing that exists, has its purpose. I don't know that I feel any way about it.
Well, there you go, folks. Jen thinks it's a thing, and you can help us out as to whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. Alex, thanks for one of our most challenging good idea, bad idea segments to round us out as we head into summer break. Folks, that's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. Please be sure to share with your friends or drop us an idea for a future episode, topic, or guest.
And don't forget that we produce our show right here in the Collaboratory space in downtown Hartford. As we mentioned, summer's here, and I'm really excited about it. And that, of course, means that there are a few fun events coming up. The Travelers Golf Championship will be coming up, and the Capitol Groove concert is rolling into Bushnell Park in the late month of June on the 29th and 30th. So maybe we'll see you in downtown Hartford. But until next time, we wish you good luck in all of your endeavors.